G'day guys, Shawnee from Life in Tennis. In today's video, I'll be discussing why I think Wimbledon 2025 is Novak Djokovic's best chance or last chance to win a record-shattering 25th Grand Slam title. So, yeah, look, the writing's on the wall for Novak. The last 6 Grand Slams have been shared between, the two players dominating men's tennis right now, Jannik and Carlos Alcaraz. And we're so used to Novak basically winning a Grand Slam every year that, it seems crazy that, he hasn't won one in, basically 2 years essentially. So I think the last Grand Slam he won was the US Open of 2023. So at that point, it probably seemed shocking that, Novak wouldn't win another Grand Slam up to this point. It just seems like he was just going to keep going and, the 25th Grand Slam is just going to be around the corner. So we're at this stage now, I guess, where it's kind of do or die for Novak. It seems that the good news for Novak is, even though, yes, Sinner and Alcaraz have been dominating men's tennis lately, he's still, every past Grand Slam this year, so the French Open and Australian Open, he is still beating at least one of the top 3 players. So if you think about it, he beat Zverev at French Open, just past, and at the Australian Open, he beat Carlos Alcaraz in the quarterfinals, I believe. So he is still, getting to the stage and beating these big players, but then he has to face one of them the next round. So obviously he beat Alcaraz in Australia, and then he had to play Zverev the next round, and he obviously retired injured in that match. And then at Roland Garros, he beats Zverev, and then, a couple of rounds later, he has to play Sinner, who beats him in straight sets. So, it just seems like he's had to basically beat one of those guys. He's been good enough to beat one of those guys, but just hasn't got it in him to beat, 2 or 3 in succession. And he'd probably have to do it again this year at Wimbledon if he, makes it to the semi-finals, which he'll most likely play against Sinner. And then, assuming that Alcaraz goes all the way, he'll have to face Alcaraz in a repeat, in a 3rd consecutive Wimbledon final, which is an insane prospect when you think about it. But I actually really hope that does eventuate, because, like I said, I just can't see any other Grand Slam that Novak can win right now, because at the moment, Jannik Sinner is the king of hardcourt. He's won the last 2 hardcourt titles, so the last 2 Australian Opens and the US Open last year. And Alcaraz is basically the new king of clay, essentially, having won 2 Roland Garroses in a row. So Wimbledon does still seem like it's probably the most even Grand Slam in terms of even across the board with everyone's chances. But of course, we saw what happened last year in the final. With the exception of that 3rd set that probably tightened up more than we expected, because Alcaraz was serving for it at 5-4, I believe. But it was it was a very convincing, what was it, 1-1 and 6, or 2-2 and 6, whatever the final score was in the end. So last year was super convincing from Alcaraz, and just didn't seem like Novak had any answers. But for some reason this year, I have a funny feeling about this year. I could definitely be proven wrong. I could definitely, probably going to put my foot in my mouth with this one. But if there's anyone that can do it, it's Novak. And if you think about it, whenever Novak's put his mind to something, to breaking some record, he's always delivered. And he's proved all of the naysayers wrong. The time is long since gone where people don't believe that Novak, can achieve, can still break records. But I think we're probably at this crossroads point where people are now going, even Novak might be, Father Time might be catching up with him. So, but look, the reasons why I believe, particularly why I believe that Wimbledon is Novak's last chance at another major and a record-breaking 25th Grand Slam. So there's 3 reasons, 3 factors that I believe. One is, it's like his history, so his experience at the tournament. It's his 2nd most lucrative Grand Slam after the Australian Open. He's won 7 titles here. And basically, other than Roger Federer, has pretty much stamped himself as one of the greatest grass court players of all time. And really, if he wins this, he'll equal Roger Federer's 8 titles at Wimbledon. And probably, you would say, could almost supersede Rog as the greatest grass court player that we've ever seen, because he beat Roger 3 times in finals. So that, that speaks volumes, right? The second factor after experience is his age. So even though, you know, as Jim Courier put it recently, time is undefeated. You know, Father Time, I think, is catching up with Novak. We have seen his movement. He's a little bit slow. He's half a step slower than, you know, he was even in, you know, his early 30s. And even in the last couple of years, you've noticed that, you know, he's not quite recovering as fast as he used to. And he's having to be a little bit more aggressive. And he's become very successful at, you know, shortening points and all the rest of it. But he just is not able to, you know, go toe-to-toe with these younger guys like he used to. You know, so that's, I think, a factor where grass is a lot quicker. It's a much faster surface. Obviously, it's the fastest surface we've got on the tour. And, you know, he won't most likely be engaged in that many long, grueling rallies that he would otherwise at, Roland Garros, particularly, and even at the, you know, the hard court slams in Australia and the US Open. So that's the second factor. The third factor is definitely his tactical brilliance. So Novak arguably is the most tactically brilliant tennis player, or tactically smart tennis player in history. You know, and he's had to adapt and evolve his game over basically essentially three different generations of players. Maybe let's say 2005 to 2015, maybe 10 or 15, and then from basically 2015 to maybe just before COVID, and then pretty much from 2022 onto current times, you know, where he's still won, you know, multiple Grand Slams in that time. So he's gone through several waves of players from all those different kind of eras. And he's been able to, you know, adapt his game accordingly. So yeah, he's just the most tactically smart player we've ever seen, the game's ever seen, arguably. And I think Wimbledon on the grass there, that's where being tactically smart is so vitally important, and where so many players actually fall down. It's funny, there's actually very few, you would say, pure grass court tennis players anymore. And I wouldn't necessarily say that Novak is actually a, you know, traditionally like a classic grass court sort of player, but he's just so tactically smart that he's always keeping his opponents on their toes, always keeping them guessing, and you never know, you know, what shot he's gonna pull off next, because he's, you know, he's happy to, like, he's not the kind of player that's going to play the same sort of style on and on throughout the whole match. He might play, you know, a good baseline rally one point, and then next thing you know, he's hitting a drop shot, following it in, or he's chip charging, or he's serve volleying, or whatever it is, you know. So it's just, yeah, he's just so smart. Like, his ability to, you know, mix things up, but also do it successfully, is like no player we've ever seen before. And the other thing too is he's one of the best, I would say, anticipators, readers of the game. You know, he's so aware of what's going on around him that, you know, the amount of times where, like, he's come into the net, but he hits such a good approach shot that even if his opponent guesses the right way, he knows where that next shot's going, or he'll still make it. He'll still hit a decent volley. You know, or even if, like, an opponent attacks him, he gets a defensive shot in, the ball lands short. The amount of times when he will just pick the right way, like he's telegraphing where that player's hitting the ball, it's insane. Like, it's just incredible. And I think it's just purely, he's got to that point now where he's almost like he's like pre-programmed a strategy for every different possible scenario you could possibly have on a tennis court. So yeah, quite remarkable. But yeah, those three reasons: age, his experience, his success, and his tactical brilliance. They're the three main reasons I believe that Wimbledon is not just his last sort of best chance at winning a major or winning one more major, but I genuinely think he has a real shot at winning Wimbledon this year. I definitely think that, I'm not sure whether he can beat, say, Jannik Sinner and Carlos Alcaraz in a row, back-to-back, semi-final to final. You'd almost think that one of those players needs to go out early or before he has to play them, because I'm not sure he can back that up. But again, we've counted Novak out so many times in the past, and how many times has he proved us wrong? So, hey, stranger things have happened. You know, he very well could beat Sinner and Alcaraz in a row. Just, I guess, on recent form, he hasn't been able to do that. He's been able to beat one of them, but then, you know, he's fallen at the next hurdle. So, but I think with grass, it definitely gives him, it evens it up a bit more than maybe the other surfaces. So he's my like it's probably a wild call, and you would never think this normally coming from Novak, but that's my wild call for this tournament, that I think he will win Wimbledon and will win his record-breaking 25th Grand Slam. And I think if he does, that will absolutely, not if it hasn't already, will absolutely cement him as the greatest tennis player, male or female, that we've ever seen. And no one could debate that. And to be honest, what better way to go out? What more motivation could you want than to go down as not only potentially the greatest grass court player we've ever seen, usurping the great Roger Federer, which will be a sad day for me. But as I said in my previous videos, I've come to admire and respect Novak over the years. But secondly, to be stamped as indisputably the greatest player of all time, male or female, that's something I think that will motivate him to no end. So yeah, but anyway guys, very, very keen to hear what your thoughts are. I actually wrote an article about this for the First Serve website, which I've put the link of in the description below. But yeah, keen to hear what you guys think Novak's chances of winning Wimbledon this year are. Comment below guys, and as always, please like and subscribe for more life and tennis related content. Cheers guys.